I know sometimes that a lot of individuals can be a little bit overwhelmed by applying for services with vocational rehabilitation, and we'd like to hopefully demystify some of the myths and help you learn a little bit more about the process.
Job Insights, a podcast to help you carve out your career pathway and enhance the opportunities for gainful employment.
Helping you with independent living skills, helping you get around town, helping you with cooking, money management, all those things that you need in order to be successful on a job.
Learn about resources for training, education, and employment opportunities. To see what best suits you, to see if you're prepared to move on to the next step.
Correct.
Thus, it's an assessment.
Correct. It helps the counselor out and it helps you out too.
We will hear from people seeking careers, employment, from professionals in the educational field, teachers, and innovators in this ever-changing world of technology to help you navigate the employment world and give you job insights and enhance the opportunities to choose the career you want.
We would hate to see you move forward with an employment goal that you thought you would absolutely love, only to find out maybe 3 months into the job that you obtained that you really don't like it so much. So it helps us save a little bit of time and prepare you for realistic expectations on the job.
And you can find the Job Insights podcast on blindabilities.com, part of the Blind Abilities Network, with hosts Serina, Gilbert, and myself, Jeff Thompson. And you can contact us by email at jobinsights@blindabilities.com. Leave us some feedback or suggest some topics that we cover. You can also follow us on Twitter at JobInsightsVIP. And check out the Job Insights support group on Facebook, where you can learn, share, advise, and interact with the Job Insights community.
Sometimes it might be getting more evaluations done with an orientation and mobility specialist or a vision rehabilitation therapist to see what kind of personal adjustment training you might need.
And now please welcome Serina, Gilbert, and Jeff Thompson with Job Insights.
Hi, Jeff. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you, Serina?
I'm doing great. How was your week?
It was good. The sun has come. Spring is finally here.
I don't know. I think you might get some more snow. It's not May yet.
We're just so glad to have it. I already got the patio furniture out, so I'm excited.
You going to be barbecuing for me?
We did that yesterday.
Nice.
And I didn't even let you know, did I?
No, you didn't even invite me, even though I don't even know how many miles away from you.
I'll waft the barbecue smell west.
Send it over with an Amazon drone,
There we go. I wonder what that sound will be.
They'll probably have like a special Amazon Prime sound for us all.
Oh yeah, so it's recognizable and
everyone's jealous because we got something from Amazon.
The dogs will all whine just a little bit. It is exciting though when a package comes.
So I heard that we got a ton of positive feedback on our very first introductory episode to Job Insights.
Yes, we did. It did not come by drone, but we got so much positive feedback. It's really exciting.
I think that's great. I know today we were talking about Vocational Rehabilitation 101, and we'll chat a little bit about the process, what to expect. I know sometimes that a lot of individuals can be a little bit overwhelmed by applying for services with vocational rehabilitation, and we'd like to hopefully demystify some of the myths and help you learn a little bit more about the process. And I know, as I talked about on the previous podcast, I was also a client of vocational rehabilitation, and I believe you were as well, right, Jeff?
Yes, I did. But unlike yourself, Serina, my ophthalmologist did not send me there. So getting started with state services was interesting.
At least you got connected. That's the biggest part.
Mm-hmm. Serina, why don't we start out by telling the listeners a little bit about what it takes to qualify for services and if it's a federal or state standard that they go by.
So it's a federal mandate, the eligibility requirements for vocational rehabilitation systems. In general, you have to have a documentable disability that poses some sort of barrier towards you entering into employment, keeping employment, or advancing in the current position that you have. You also have to be able to basically benefit from the services, and that's a presumption that most agencies make.
A presumption.
A presumption of eligibility. Another eligibility criteria that helps is, I believe, if you receive SSI or SSDI, then you are automatically eligible for vocational rehabilitation services.
So that's usually a process when you go there for services, then you probably have to go to a doctor, so it's documented.
Well, you can go to a doctor, but if you do not have documentation of your disability, vocational rehabilitation can actually either send out for the records or send you for evaluations in order to obtain that documentation.
And that's just one of the steps of the intake process.
So that first step is your intake appointment, which your counselor will go over a ton of different paperwork with you. You'll sign some releases of information for them to be able to talk to necessary individuals that might be working with you on the case, or to obtain medical records, or again, refer you for those necessary evaluations. And from that time frame of the first date that you officially apply for services, your counselor has up to 60 days to determine you eligible for services. It can take that long depending on the counselor's caseload, but sometimes it's faster. It just depends on the documentation that you already have and what that counselor's caseload looks like.
Is that the same for when agency is on order of a selection?
Correct. They still have the same 60 days eligibility determination requirements, even if they do have a wait list or order of selection.
So if they determine on the intake that you're in, then what's the next step?
The next step is what's called the comprehensive assessment. What happens in this stage is you and your counselor are working together to identify a reasonable and suitable employment goal, and also identify the necessary services that might be provided to you in order to help you achieve that employment goal. Sometimes this process could include you trying out work, doing what's called a situational assessment, and that would involve you going to a work site and trying out the job to see if you like it, see if the duties are something that work well with your personality and your disability, and also to help you with networking. Sometimes it might be getting more evaluations done with an orientation and mobility specialist or a vision rehabilitation therapist to see what kind of personal adjustment training you might need.
Serina, personal adjustment training. Can you break that down for our listeners?
Definitely. Personal adjustment training might include helping you with independent living skills, helping you get around town, helping you with cooking, money management, all those things that you need in order to be successful on a job.
And typically, you could be sent to a blindness training center or a vendor of the agency?
It depends on the state. Some agencies do use the blindness centers. Some do have in-house service providers that work specifically for DVR or third-party vendors like you mentioned. And then I'm not sure about other states, but here in Colorado, we do actually have a center-based program that the Vocational Rehabilitation program staffs as well.
And in Minnesota, we're fortunate enough to have 3 adjustment to blindness training centers. Vision Loss Resource in Minneapolis, Blind Incorporated in Minneapolis, and in Duluth, we have the Lighthouse for the Blind, plus state services for the blind and various vendors that will provide specialized services as well. You mentioned doing a situational type of thing where you go to an employer and they do an evaluation. Would that be set up with your employment specialist to see if this is an interest of theirs or to see if they like it?
It can be set up through an employment specialist if the state that you work in is structured in that manner. Sometimes it's your vocational rehabilitation counselor that's setting it up. And sometimes it could even be a third-party vendor that you're working with that's providing that assessment service for us.
And this is all in an attempt to see what best suits you to see if you're prepared to move on to the next step.
Correct.
Thus, it's an assessment.
Correct. It helps the counselor out and it helps you out too, because we would hate to see you move forward with an employment goal that you thought you would absolutely love, only to find out maybe 3 months into the job that you obtain that you really don't like it so much. So it helps us save a little bit of time and prepare you for realistic expectations on the job.
So if you do need some soft skills, if you do need some technology skills, and it's determined that you should go to a blindness training center of some sorts, that might set you back 6 to 9 months or whatever it takes, right?
That's correct. The blindness training centers are not super short programs. I think the shortest program that they have is the summer youth program for those that are still in either high school or college perhaps. And I believe that's even 8 weeks.
And that's basically like a step program to bridge you into college preparedness.
Correct.
And if you're planning on going just straight into the workforce, then a training center might give you the skills that are needed to help gain employment.
Correct. They work on every skill that you can possibly think of, from independent transportation, orientation and mobility, independent living. I do believe they do some self-advocacy training, as well as working on basic social skills, because you are living on campus with lots of other people. And there's going to be times when you disagree and you're going to have to use those conflict resolution skills, which will help you for sure once you start working.
I know we talk about transition age students quite a bit, but there's also other people, adults that have vision loss and they want to get their employment back. And so these training centers do adult programs as well.
And it can be quite helpful because I know last time we talked a little bit about an individual maybe who's coming in that has lost sight a little bit later in life, but still really wants to work. That's a hard transition coming from having a driver's license and being able to independently transport yourself and work on a computer to all of a sudden not having those skills anymore and abilities. And those centers and also other field-based programs through vocational rehabilitation can certainly help with that transition and also help you connect with different support groups and things like that so that you can start networking with individuals who've maybe been there as well.
However, before you move on to this step, you must set up an individual plan for employment.
That is correct. And all of the individualized plans for employment can only have services on it that the counselor and you agree are necessary and appropriate. And then they are always purchased at the least possible cost. So there might be times when there's certain products that you really, really would like, but the counselor has to follow certain policies and purchase things at the lowest possible cost that is still appropriate for what you need the items for.
But typically the items will get you to your destination.
Exactly. Like as an example, there's lots of different types of computers now. We have our personal computers that maybe would run a screen reader or screen magnification software, and we have our MacBooks that also have that same type of software built into it. Typically, vocational rehabilitation is going to look at purchasing personal computers, more so because we're looking down the road at employment, and most employers still use personal computers. So it makes the most sense to get you used to using that type of a technology if you're going to be working in an office environment down the road.
And when you're saying personal computers, you're talking about Microsoft-based platform.
Correct, like a Windows computer.
Mm-hmm. Serina, can you tell us how flexible an IPE, individual plan for employment, is?
Yes, it's a plan. Yes, it's written on paper, but that doesn't mean that it can't be changed. So it's really important to communicate with your counselor if you feel that something's not going the way that you want it to go or that you want to try something different, because that plan can definitely be amended. It's actually quite rare that we have the exact same plan from start to finish.
Okay, someone goes through the process and they get their training, making progress, and you're checking the list and moving forward, and now they're going to college and they're succeeding according to the plan. And it comes time to where they start thinking about the job and job resumes and job interviews and all that. Is there any services for that type of area?
Definitely. It can be considered part of vocational counseling and guidance, which is on every single plan for employment across the country. I don't think there's any plans that don't have that, but it's also part of what we call job seeking skills training, which would be you either working with your counselor or perhaps a third party vendor to develop that resume, develop a general cover letter, and also start doing mock interviews and begin talking about how do you want to handle the interview? How do you want to disclose your disability if you want to do that at all? And how do you advocate for yourself during that interview? For example, if you need an accommodation for testing and things like that as part of the interviewing process.
Now, when it comes to disclosure, there's so many debates about it, and I don't think there is any one answer, one fits all for this topic.
Correct. And I know we're probably going to talk about that. Maybe that'll be our next episode, because that's a hot topic of how do I disclose my disability and when and where, and am I going to get discriminated against, things like that. I know people are very fearful of that. That definitely will warrant a full episode.
And that's a big one. So is writing your resume, because a resume is a work in progress, because if you're looking at one job, looking at a next job, it has to form to the job, the keywords and everything. So it's a good skill to have and a good thing to have a template to be able to adjust it for the job you're seeking.
Exactly. We call it tailoring your resume, because if you're not putting in specific keywords, a human's not even going to see your resume, because there's so many electronic ways that they use optical character recognition and scanning the resume that you submitted either online or even email, where they just scan to see specific keywords and skills. And if it doesn't meet that, then it automatically gets denied.
Optical character recognition. It was such a gift, and now it's working against us.
Yep. Sound familiar though, right?
Mm-hmm. Serina, with all your experiences, what tips would you have for someone who is receiving services and working with a counselor?
So during the vocational rehabilitation process, it's really important that you stay in close contact with your vocational rehabilitation counselor. There will be a lot of times when they're going to be asking for tons of paperwork that you might find cumbersome or even redundant. I promise you they wouldn't be asking you for it if they didn't need it, because we get a lot of paperwork. If we didn't need it, we wouldn't be asking for it for you. So especially if you're on a plan for employment that includes training, every semester we're going to be looking at What grades did you get? What classes are you registering for next semester? Do you need any books? Did you apply for your federal financial aid? All of those things are things that are required before we can say, yes, we will pay for your tuition this semester at the school. If your counselor sends you an email asking for something, the quicker you reply, the quicker things can move. And just know that sometimes things can't move overnight. If you call us and ask for a specific piece of technology, we might not be able to get that for you immediately, especially if it's not included on your plan for employment. There might be some paperwork things that have to be done and ordering processes and things like that. So we ask that you're a little bit patient with us, but also the more you communicate with us, the better service provisions you will have.
And staying ahead of the game is the whole thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, being on the State Rehab Council, I get a lot of documents about the agencies, and I see that one of the highest percentage of closures is because of lack of communication by the client back to the agency.
That's probably actually pretty accurate because especially with my caseload, I work with a lot of young adults. So they're still learning how to keep in touch. So I do give them quite a few chances, but it never fails that as soon as I close a case, because I haven't heard from them despite multiple attempts on my end, about 2 weeks later is when they call me back and say, well, I didn't know that you were going to close my case. And obviously, yes, you can go back through the process and we can open it again, but it's much more efficient even if you just send me a text message saying, everything's all right, I'm still out here. And that'll keep things going for you. But we have to remain efficient and show that the people that we're working with are making progress in order to meet our goals and outcomes.
Serina, this is a lot of great information for someone who is going through vision loss. What advice would you have for someone who is seeking services from their division of vocational rehab or their state services for the blind?
If you are a transition aid student and you're at least 15 years old and you are definitely starting to think about employment and what's next, and actually some states it's as little as 14, but most states it's about 15 or 16. But if you're starting to think about employment, I would say do not hesitate to contact your local vocational rehabilitation, talk to them about services. Even if you call and you meet with them and it's not quite the right time, you are at least ahead of the game and knowing what to expect when you do decide that it's the right time for you. If you're an individual that's lost sight a little bit later in life, or maybe have never heard of vocational rehabilitation and you're struggling with some vision difficulties, pick up the phone and give them a call, especially if you're looking into employment. All of our services at vocational rehabilitation are for sure geared towards employment now. So any services that we provide do have to be tied to an employment goal with an eventual goal of being employed in the long term.
You know, Serina, when I first lost my eyesight, I was skeptical. I was like worried about what's going to happen. And I didn't know. I didn't know where the blind were. I didn't know anything. And I kind of felt like state services, the agency was kind of a safety net. So I was going to go out there and forge my own path. And if I failed, I would head towards the agency and get services. But now today, the more I know about it, it seems like it's a vehicle towards the future. And I've said this many times, but it is. It's a resource. It's a place to go to learn about the pathways that you can take towards employment.
And I'm curious, what was your experience on the client side? I know you're on the State Rehab Council and things like that, but what do you remember being your very first experience when you first applied for services?
Yeah, this is a great question for me because my experience was quite unique, I think, because when I first lost my eyesight, I sold my pickup truck and I bought a brand new computer. I bought JAWS and I started doing things the way I thought was best. I did things my own way. I did not understand that State Services for the Blind, with an IPE, an individual plan for employment, would have set up something of the nature to provide me the tools for me to succeed according to the plan and my goals. And once I understood that there were services as such, I then meticulously figured out what I would have to do for myself and what they could do for me. And together we could reach the goals that we both set up. So I think part of the demystification of this is they won't buy you everything. It's not a toy store, but they will assist you in succeeding. And those services do range from, picking the right college that best suits your field, the technology that you'll need to succeed in college or in the workplace. There's so many services that are available there. You just have to make that call. Like you said, Serina, make that call and find out what they can do for you and what you have to do as well.
Well, and that some way, just popped a thought into my head. I know that some individuals most likely receive SSI or SSDI, some sort of social security benefits. And it can be a little nerve-wracking wondering, what if I start work and then it doesn't work out? How are my benefits impacted? There's lots of different rules related to social security and work. So I'm thinking that might be a really good idea for another future topic as well.
Absolutely. And when a person is going through vision loss, it doesn't mean that they're totally educated on all the intricacies that are involved from your state services, from your DVR, from the government, from Social Security. All these things have to be learned and dealt with. And that's why talking with your counselor to learn, to educate yourself so you can better be prepared for the opportunities that are ahead of you. And I think calling your state services is one of the best things that a person could do. And that's why they call it a informed choice.
Exactly. So many topics, Jeff. We're never going to end.
That's job security, huh?
For sure. How insightful.
Yeah. Speaking of something that never ends, I thought winter was the same way around here, but we got grass out back now and the trees are starting to bud. I could feel the little apple trees with the little buds on them.
That's awesome. You'll start sneezing pretty soon here.
I'm just glad I planted apple trees because I don't think they make PC trees.
Ba-dum-bum. Well, that concludes today's podcast, but next week we will be tackling that tough topic of disability disclosure and the job interview. If you have questions, you can email us at
jobinsights@blindabilities.com
or follow us on Twitter
at jobinsightsvip. Thank you, Chichow, for your beautiful music. That's El Chichow on Twitter. We really hope you enjoyed this podcast. Thanks for listening, and until next time, bye-bye.
When we share
what we see
through each other's eyes, we can then begin to bridge the gap between
the limited expectations and the realities
of blind abilities.
The realities of blind abilities.
For more podcasts with a blindness perspective, check us out on the web at www.blindabilities.com, on Twitter at blindabilities. Download our app from the App Store, blindabilities, that's 2 words, or send us an email at info@blindabilities.com. Thanks for listening.